The wind howled through the dense forest, carrying with it the icy bite of winter. Snowflakes swirled in the air, blanketing the ground in a thick layer of white. It was a night when most creatures sought shelter, but for one man, this was just another evening in the wilderness. John Carter was a wildlife photographer, a man who had always felt more at home among the trees and animals than in the bustling cities. He had been tracking a rare species of deer for days, hoping to capture the perfect shot. But as the storm grew fiercer, he realized it was time to head back to his cabin. As he trudged through the snow, his boots sinking with every step, a faint sound caught his ear. It was a whimper, barely audible over the wind. John stopped, his breath visible in the cold air, and listened. The sound came again, this time more desperate. It was the cry of an animal in pain. Following the sound, John pushed through the underbrush until he found the source. There, lying in a shallow ditch, was a wolf. Her fur was matted with blood, and her breathing was shallow. But what struck John the most was her belly. She was heavily pregnant. The wolf's golden eyes met his, filled with fear and pain. John hesitated. Wolves were dangerous, especially when injured. But something in her gaze tugged at his heart. He couldn't leave her here to die. "All right, girl," he whispered, slowly approaching her. "I'm not going to hurt you." The wolf whimpered again, her body trembling. John knelt beside her, carefully inspecting her wounds. She had been caught in a trap, the sharp metal teeth digging deep into her leg. It was a miracle she had survived this long. Using his scarf, John fashioned a makeshift bandage to stop the bleeding. He then gently lifted the wolf into his arms, surprised by how light she felt despite her size. The journey back to his cabin was slow and arduous, but John didn't stop until he had her safely inside. The cabin was warm, the fire crackling in the hearth. John laid the wolf down on a pile of blankets near the fire, her breathing still labored. He knew he had to act fast if he wanted to save her and her unborn pups. John wasn't a veterinarian, but years of living in the wild had taught him basic first aid. He cleaned the wolf's wounds as best he could, removing the trap and stitching the deep gashes. The wolf barely moved, a trust in him growing with every gentle touch. Days turned into weeks, and the wolf slowly began to heal. John named her Luna, after the moon that had guided him to her that fateful night. The two formed an unlikely bond, with Luna often following John around the cabin, her golden eyes watching his every move. One night, as the storm outside raged on, Luna began to whimper again. But this time, it wasn't from pain. She was going into labor. John stayed by her side, offering what little comfort he could. The hours dragged on, but finally, the first pup was born. Then another, and another. By morning, Luna had given birth to 5 healthy pups, their tiny bodies squirming close to their mother for warmth. John couldn't help but smile. He had saved Luna, and in turn, she had brought new life into the world. But as he looked out the window at the snow-covered forest, he couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. Spring arrived, melting the snow and breathing new life into the forest. Luna and her pups thrived under John's care, their once fragile bodies now strong and full of energy. The pups, Max, Bella, Shadow, Ruby, and Ace, were a handful, their playful antics keeping John on his toes. But as the days grew warmer, John knew he couldn't keep them forever. Wolves belonged in the wild, not cooped up in a cabin. He had to prepare them for life outside, a task that was easier said than done. John began taking the pups on short walks, teaching them to hunt and survive in the forest. Luna always followed close behind, her watchful eyes never leaving her family. The bond between man and wolf grew stronger with each passing day, a silent understanding that transcended words. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, John sat by the fire with Luna by his side. The pups were curled up nearby, their soft snores filling the cabin. John stroked Luna's fur, his mind wandering. "You know, girl," he said softly, "I'm going to miss you when you're gone." Luna looked up at him, her golden eyes filled with something that resembled gratitude. She nuzzled his hand, a gesture that spoke volumes. In that moment, John knew he had done the right thing by saving her. But the wilderness was calling, and soon Luna and her pups would have to answer. The day finally came when John decided it was time for Luna and her pups to take their first real hunt. He had been preparing them for weeks, teaching them to track and stalk their prey. Now, it was time to put their skills to the test. John led them deep into the forest, his camera slung over his shoulder. He wanted to capture this moment, not just for himself, but for the world to see. The pups bounded ahead, their excitement palpable, while Luna stayed close to John, her instincts on high alert. It didn't take long for them to find a trail. A deer had passed through recently, its tracks fresh in the soft earth. John signaled for the pups to stay quiet, their training kicking in as they crouched low to the ground. Luna took the lead, her movements graceful and precise. The pups followed, their eyes locked on their mother. John watched from a distance, his camera ready. The hunt was over in minutes. Luna's sharp instincts and the pups' coordination led to a successful catch. John couldn't help but feel a sense of pride as he watched them feast on their hard-earned meal. But as the sun set and the forest grew dark, John realized something. Luna and her pups were no longer just his companions. They were a pack. And soon, they would have to face the challenges of the wild on their own. Summer was in full swing, the forest alive with the sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves. Luna and her pups had grown stronger, their bond as a pack unbreakable. But John knew the time had come to say goodbye. One morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, John led Luna and her pups to the edge of the forest. It was a place he had chosen carefully, far from any human settlements but rich with prey and shelter. Luna seemed to sense what was coming. She stood tall, her golden eyes meeting John's. The pups gathered around her, their playful energy replaced by a quiet solemnity. "This is it, girl," John said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're ready." Luna stepped forward, nuzzling John's hand one last time. The pups followed, each one saying their own silent goodbye. Then, with a final glance at the man who had saved them, Luna turned and led her pack into the forest. John watched until they disappeared from sight, his heart heavy but full. He had given them a second chance at life, and now it was their time to live it. But as he turned to head back to his cabin, a distant howl echoed through the trees. It was Luna, her voice carrying a message of gratitude and farewell. John smiled, knowing that their bond would never be broken. The forest was a different world for Luna and her pack. Gone were the warm fires and the safety of John's cabin. Now, they had to rely on their instincts and each other to survive. The first few weeks were tough. The pups, though strong, were still learning the ways of the wild. One evening, as the pack rested near a stream, a low growl echoed through the trees. Luna's ears perked up, her body tense. She knew that sound. It was a bear, and it was close. The pups huddled together, their eyes wide with fear. Luna stepped forward, her golden eyes locked on the shadow moving through the trees. She let out a fierce howl, a warning to the bear to stay away. The bear hesitated, its massive form looming in the darkness. For a moment, it seemed like a fight was inevitable. But then, something incredible happened. Max, the boldest of the pups, stepped forward and let out a small, defiant growl. The other pups followed, their tiny voices joining Luna's. Together, they created a chorus of courage that echoed through the forest. The bear, surprised by the pack's unity, turned and lumbered away. Luna nuzzled her pups, pride shining in her eyes. They had faced their first real challenge and emerged victorious. But the wild was full of dangers, and Luna knew that their journey was far from over. Months passed, and the pack grew stronger. Luna's pups were now young wolves, their skills honed by countless hunts and close calls. But despite their success, Luna often found herself thinking of John. She could still smell his scent on the wind, a reminder of the man who had saved her life. One day, as the pack roamed the forest, Luna caught a familiar scent. It was faint, but unmistakable, John. Her heart raced as she followed the trail, the pups close behind. They traveled for miles, the scent growing stronger with every step. Finally, they reached a clearing, and there, standing with his camera in hand, was John. He looked older, his face weathered by the elements, but his eyes still held the same kindness that Luna remembered. John froze as he saw the pack emerge from the trees. He couldn't believe his eyes. Luna, the wolf he had saved, was standing before him, her golden eyes filled with recognition. The pups, now grown, watched him curiously. "Luna," John whispered, his voice trembling. Luna stepped forward, her tail wagging slightly. She nuzzled John's hand, just like she had done so many times before. The pups followed, their curiosity turning to affection as they realized who this man was. Tears filled John's eyes as he knelt down, his hands gently stroking Luna's fur. "I missed you, girl," he said softly. The pack surrounded him, their warmth a reminder of the bond they shared. It was a moment of pure joy, a reunion that neither John nor Luna had expected. But as the sun set and the forest grew dark, John knew that this was only the beginning of their next chapter. The reunion was short-lived. As John spent time with the pack, he noticed something troubling. The forest, once teeming with life, was growing quieter. The animals were disappearing, and the air was thick with tension. One evening, as John and the pack rested near a river, a loud crack echoed through the trees. John's heart sank as he realized what it was. A gunshot. Poachers had entered the forest, and they were after the wolves. Luna's ears perked up, her body tense. She let out a low growl, her golden eyes scanning the trees. The pack gathered around her, their instincts on high alert. John knew he had to act fast. "We need to get out of here," he whispered, his voice urgent. "Follow me." John led the pack through the forest, his heart pounding with every step. The poachers were close, their voices carrying through the trees. John knew that if they were caught, the pack would be in grave danger. But as they ran, disaster struck. Max, the boldest of the pups, tripped and let out a yelp of pain. The sound echoed through the forest, drawing the attention of the poachers. Luna turned back, her eyes filled with determination. She wouldn't leave her pup behind. John hesitated, torn between his own safety and the pack's. But in the end, he knew what he had to do. "Go," he said to Luna, his voice firm. "I'll distract them." Luna hesitated, her golden eyes filled with conflict. But then, with a final nuzzle, she led the pack deeper into the forest, leaving John behind. John stood his ground, his heart racing as the poachers approached. He knew he was outnumbered, but he couldn't let them harm the pack. As the first poacher emerged from the trees, John stepped forward, his hands raised. "Leave them alone," he said, his voice steady. "They are not your prey." The poachers laughed, their guns pointed at John. "Step aside, old man," one of them sneered. "We're here for the wolves." But John didn't move. He stood tall, his eyes locked on the poachers. "You'll have to go through me first," he said. The poachers hesitated, surprised by John's bravery. But then, one of them raised his gun, his finger tightening on the trigger. Just as the shot rang out, a blur of fur leaped in front of John. It was Luna. She took the bullet meant for him, her body crumpling to the ground. John's heart shattered as he fell to his knees beside her. "No, Luna," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Why?" Luna looked up at him, her golden eyes filled with love and gratitude. She had saved him, just as he had saved her all those months ago. The poachers, shaken by what they had done, retreated into the forest. But John barely noticed. All he could see was Luna, her breathing shallow and her body weak. The pack returned, their eyes filled with rage as they saw Luna lying on the ground. John held her close, his tears falling onto her fur. But then, something incredible happened. Luna let out a weak howl, her voice carrying through the forest. The pack responded, their voices joining hers in a chorus of defiance. Even in her weakened state, Luna was still their leader. The pack turned their attention to the forest, their eyes locked on the retreating poachers. With a fierce determination, they set off, their movements swift and silent. John watched as the pack disappeared into the trees, his heart heavy but hopeful. He knew that Luna's sacrifice had not been in vain. The pack would protect their home, just as she had protected him. As the sun rose over the forest, John stayed by Luna's side, his hand gently stroking her fur. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. The bond between man and wolf was unbreakable. Luna's breathing was shallow, her golden eyes half closed as John cradled her in his arms. The bullet had grazed her shoulder, but the wound was deep. John knew he had to act fast if he wanted to save her. Using his scarf, he applied pressure to the wound, his hands trembling as he whispered words of comfort. "Stay with me, girl," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You're stronger than this." The pack returned shortly after, their eyes filled with concern as they gathered around Luna. Max, the boldest of the pups, nuzzled her gently, his whimpers echoing through the forest. The others followed, their warmth a reminder of the bond they shared. John knew he couldn't carry Luna back to his cabin alone. He looked at the pack, his voice firm. "I need your help," he said. "We have to get her to safety." To his amazement, the pack understood. Max and Shadow positioned themselves on either side of Luna, supporting her weight as they began the slow journey back to the cabin. John led the way, his heart pounding with every step. By the time they reached the cabin, the sun was setting. John quickly cleaned Luna's wound, stitching it as best he could. The pack stayed by her side, their presence a source of comfort for both Luna and John. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Luna began to heal. Her strength returned, and with it, her spirit. But John could see the change in her. She was no longer just a wolf. She was a leader, a protector, and a mother. As Luna regained her strength, the bond between her, the pack, and John grew even stronger. The pack had accepted John as one of their own, their trust in him unwavering. John, in turn, felt a deep sense of responsibility for their safety. One evening, as they sat by the fire, John noticed something unusual. Luna was restless, her golden eyes scanning the forest. The pack followed her lead, their ears perked and their bodies tense. "What is it, girl?" John asked, his voice low. Luna let out a soft growl, her eyes locked on the trees. John followed her gaze, his heart sinking as he saw the flicker of a flashlight in the distance. The poachers were back. John knew they couldn't fight them off again. He had to come up with a plan. "We need to lead them away," he whispered to Luna. "Can you do that?" Luna nodded, her eyes filled with determination. She let out a low howl, signaling the pack to follow. John watched as they disappeared into the forest, their movements swift and silent. But as the hours passed, John grew anxious. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Finally, he grabbed his camera and set off into the forest, his heart pounding with every step. The forest was eerily quiet, the only sound the crunch of leaves under John's boots. He followed the pack's trail, his camera ready. But as he approached a clearing, he froze. The pack was surrounded. The poachers had set a trap, their guns pointed at the wolves. Luna stood at the front, her golden eyes blazing with defiance. The pack growled, their voices a chorus of rage. John's heart raced as he realized what was happening. He had to do something, fast. But before he could act, one of the poachers raised his gun, aiming it at Luna. "No!" John shouted, stepping into the clearing. "Leave them alone!" The poachers turned, their eyes narrowing as they saw John. "This doesn't concern you, old man," one of them sneered. "Step aside." But John didn't move. He stood tall, his eyes locked on the poachers. "If you want them, you will have to go through me," he said. The poachers hesitated, surprised by John's bravery. But then, one of them raised his gun, his finger tightening on the trigger. Just as the shot rang out, the pack sprang into action. Luna leaped at the poacher, her teeth bared. The others followed, their movements swift and precise. The poachers, caught off guard, dropped their guns and fled into the forest. John watched in awe as the pack worked together, their coordination flawless. Luna stood tall, her golden eyes filled with pride. The pack had protected their home, and John. But the victory was bittersweet. John knew the poachers would be back. He had to find a way to protect the pack for good. As the sun rose over the forest, John made a decision. He would document the pack's story, sharing it with the world. He knew that if people saw the beauty and strength of these wolves, they would fight to protect them. John spent the next few weeks filming the pack, capturing their daily lives and the bond they shared. The footage was breathtaking, a testament to the incredible connection between man and wolf. When the documentary was released, it went viral. People from all over the world were moved by the story of John and Luna, their hearts touched by the pack's loyalty and bravery. The poachers were eventually caught, their crimes exposed by John's footage. The forest was declared a protected area, ensuring the safety of the pack for generations to come. As for John, he continued to live in the forest, his bond with the pack stronger than ever. Luna and her pups thrived, their howls a reminder of the incredible journey they had shared. One evening, as John sat by the fire with Luna by his side, he smiled. "We did it, girl," he said softly. "We saved them." Luna nuzzled his hand, her golden eyes filled with gratitude. The pack gathered around them, their voices joining in a chorus of howls that echoed through the forest. It was a new beginning, a testament to the power of love, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between man and wolf. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey of John and Luna. Their story is a reminder of the beauty and strength of nature and the bonds that can form between humans and animals. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing tales. Let's spread the message of love and protection for wildlife together. Now, I want to hear from you. What would you have done if you were in John's shoes? Would you have risked everything to save Luna and her pack? Let me know in the comments below. Your thoughts and stories inspire me to create more content like this. See you in the next video.